Don't worry about that button, no one uses it. Dreamworld ride operator didn't know how to stop deadly Thunder River Rapids tragedy and says staff were told not to touch emergency controls. A Dreamworld ride operator was unsure of which button to press to stop the tragedy which killed 4 people. The inquest into the Dreamworld tragedy began on Monday at the Southport Coroners Court, which heard staff were confused by the ride's controls. Cindy Lowe, Kate Goodchild, her brother Luke Dorset and his partner Ruzi Aragi lost their lives in the tragedy on the Gold Coast, Queensland in October 2016. Barrister Stephen Wybrow, representing victims Kate Goodchild and Luke Dorset, told the inquest that an emergency button which was clearly labeled and the staff member was told not to worry about it. She was told not to worry about the button, no one uses it? Mr. Wybrow asked lead police investigator Detective Sergeant Nicola Brown. A memo was sent to staff in the days before the tragedy had dissuaded staff from using the emergency button, Mr. Wybrow added. Yes, that Sergeant Brown answered to both. In addition to staff being dissuaded from using the emergency button, the inquest heard the main control panel for the ride did not have an emergency switch. The emergency switch would have been used to shut down the ride, while the second switch needed to stop the ride's conveyor belt. It is a confusing control panel, and that has been raised by the auditors, that Sergeant Brown said. She said an automatic sensor to shut down the ride if water levels dropped to a dangerous level would have prevented the tragedy. We're talking about human beings. It was a human being that has to stop it. Earlier on Monday, the inquest heard that Dreamworld staff feared for the safety of the Thunder River Rapids ride that killed 4 people 15 years before it malfunctioned. An email sent by a theme park worker said, I shudder when I think if there had been guests on the ride after an incident in 2001. Counsel assisting Ken Fleming QC revealed several earlier incidents had occurred on the Thunder River Rapids ride. Mr. Fleming said one incident, in January 2001, had resulted in several empty rafts colliding at the unloading point of the ride. Det Sergeant Brown said the water pump on the ride had stopped working twice in the hours leading up to the fatal incident. Once at 11:50 am and then again at 1:09 p.m. before being reset by engineers. The inquest heard the incident was disturbingly similar to the one that resulted in the deaths of the 4 people in 2016. When the raft containing victims as well as 2 children collided with another raft, it flipped over and dropped the guests into the conveyor system. All 4 victims were killed instantly from compressive and crushing injuries. Ms. Goodchild's 12-year-old daughter and Ms. Lowe's 10-year-old son were on the raft that flipped at the end of the ride, but survived. The inquest heard the emergency stop button on the ride could have shut it down in 2 seconds, the Courier Mail reported. The families have sought answers and relatives of Ms. Lowe have said how they hoped the probe would prevent others from suffering such enormous heartbreak. Dreamworld announced it would demolish the Thunder River Rapids ride in November 2016. 2016 October 25, the Thunder River Rapids ride malfunctions and causes the deaths of Ms. Lowe, Ms. Goodchild, Mr. Dorset and Mr. Aragi. October 26, Dreamworld announced plans to reopen on October 28. The reopening is later cancelled following advice from police to scrap their plans. October 27, parent company Ardent Leisure hold its AGM in Sydney. Then CEO Deborah Thomas comes under fire for not speaking directly to the victims' families. November 3, New Zealand expat Cindy Lowe's funeral is held on the NSW Central Coast. November 5, Ruzi Aragi's funeral is held in Sydney. November 7, Kate Goodchild and Luke Dorset are farewelled at a funeral in Canberra. November 9, Dreamworld announces it will demolish the Thunder River Rapids ride. November 25, Workplace Health and Safety auditors issue 7 improvement notices and 3 prohibition notices following inspection of Dreamworld and Whitewater World. December 10, Whitewater World fully reopens and Dreamworld partially reopens, with many of the big rides undergoing safety reviews. 2017 January 6, Ardent Leisure announces revenues have plummeted by 63% across Dreamworld and Whitewater World. April 26, Deborah Thomas announces she is standing down as Ardent Leisure CEO. She later leaves the business with a $731,000 payout. June 30, Ardent Leisure reports $62.6 million loss for the financial year. Crowds at Dreamworld estimated to have dropped by as much as 30%. September 28, a workplace health and safety investigation is completed. Industrial Relations Minister Grace says charges against Dreamworld are possible. October 13, police conclude its report into the incident and deliver a 2-volume brief to the coroner. 2018 June 18, coronial inquest hears there was a previous similar incident on the Thunder River Rapids ride in 2016. Source: App.